right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start off with a statement, and then we'll do our usual Q&A. It's good to see you all. So, to my fellow Oregonians, I want you to know that my focus is doing the best job possible for you and your families. I take responsibility for not being more thoughtful in my approach to exploring the role of the first spouse. And I'm sorry that the conversation between my office and you started the way that it did. You know, I was honored to be elected as the governor of this great state so that I could bring clarity and energy to tackling the state's biggest challenges. My administration, since day one, has held that true north, prioritizing the state's homelessness and housing crisis, the inadequate system of mental health and addiction care across our state, and the need to improve educational outcomes for children with a focus on early literacy and summer learning. We really do have a lot to do together to achieve our shared goals, and with these priorities and a renewed focus on strengthening how state government does its work, I believe we've made progress and will continue to make progress. My job as governor is to see the entire playing field, whether it's deepening my understanding of the needs of our entire state by visiting all 36 counties in my first year, collaborating with lawmakers to pass critical new laws and investments, focusing on the future success of the Portland Central City, or responding to the inquiries of individuals who contact my office. No topic is too small or too big when it comes to serving Oregonians. Now I'd like to talk about the First Lady. First Lady Amy Kotek Wilson has been by my side for 20 years. The First Lady and I share a profound commitment to standing up for the most vulnerable among us, fighting for a more just world, and making sure we leave this world better than we found it. She's a social worker. She's someone with lived experience in mental health and recovery, and someone who has, throughout her career, helped lift up the stories of others to make meaningful change. As a family, the First Lady and I jointly and intentionally decided that she not return to employment or have any outside income as to avoid any perceived or actual conflict of interest. And her work as First Lady is also unpaid and is on a volunteer basis. As a family, we have traversed Oregon on the campaign trail and on the One Oregon listening tour, reaffirming our faith that nothing is impossible if Oregonians work together. In my short time as governor, I've considered how Oregon can emulate other states that rely on the time and talent of a first spouse who has no financial interest or benefit in state government. And there is no roadmap here in Oregon on how to do that, for defining the role of a first spouse, who is a public official under Oregon law. I make all policy and personnel decisions in my office. I've sought guidance from the National Governors Association and the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. I'm committed to defining the role of the first spouse with respect to what we learned from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, not only on behalf of this administration, but for future administrations as well. After listening to and reflecting on the concerns that Oregonians have raised when they've contacted my office, as well as the advice of my staff, I want to be clear about the following. There will not be an office of the first spouse. There will not be a chief of staff to the first spouse. And other than staff that is assigned to support the First Lady in her official duties, no state staff will report to her or be supervised by her. My office is also assembling a first spouse manual to spell out the policies and procedures related to the role, including protocols for addressing any staff concerns or complaints. The First Spouse Manual is in progress and is one of the reasons Malia Masiba was brought on as a temporary advisor to my office to work on this. She reports to my Chief of Staff, Chris Warner. And for those of you who want to see the job description, her job description, you can link onto it on the statement online. So between now and when we learn more from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, here's what the First Lady will do. The First Lady will continue to accompany me and attend events representing the governor's office, such as tribal visits and ceremonial events, and she will listen to Oregonians about the issues most impacting them, especially in the area of mental health and addiction. The trust of Oregonians, your trust, is important to me. And I just want you to know that I'm going to continue to work hard to solve problems so that every Oregonian can have what they need. Thank you. And with that, we'll take some questions.
Warren, will the first spouse still have a physical office in your larger office space, and will staff members still be expected to engage in policy discussions with her?
Well, the First Lady, in terms of any official work she's been doing, it's mostly done out of the residence. She does have, we both have an office in the governor's residence. She will continue to have an office here if she needs it, a physical space to drop when she's in the office, which is not very often. I would just say I think it would be inappropriate for the First Lady to sit in the waiting area if she is in the office, but she has a place to drop. By the way, it's an office that's open to anyone if she's not there to use as well. In terms of, is it the policy conversation?
Yeah, will staff still be expected to take her calls and engage with her on policies? Will she still be meeting with the behavioral health advisor frequently, one-on-one?
Well, as you can see from her calendar, she has not been meeting with staff since the first of the year. In our interest of trying to figure this out, what I will say is, if she has information she needs to pass on, we'll make sure it gets to the right people. But as I've said, she's going to continue to attend tribe visits with me, do ceremonial events, and I want to give an example of that. So last year when I was unable to, because of my schedule, she came and did the remarks, for example, at the Fallen Firefighter Memorial over at DPSST. There are plenty of opportunities where she can be standing in for me on things, and she'll continue to do that with the appropriate staffing. And listening to people. I think what we all have to understand is a lot of people talk, they see us, we're out, visiting with tribes or on the road. I want to make sure that she can hear what people are saying and pass it along to the right people.
But respectfully, I don't think the issues were with the first spouse traveling places with you, but more with the interaction with your existing staff in your office. And so I'm just curious how you're going to define that role and interaction.
Well, as I said, I want to be very clear what she is going to do right now until we get further guidance from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. Because that's what I've heard from folks. Well, what exactly is she doing now while you're waiting for that advice? Going on visits with me, doing ceremonial events as needed, listening to folks. I think that's very clear. And we need to see what the other guidance is from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. And we'll wait to see what that looks like.
Lisa?
Governor, why did this take so long to come to this point when you lost key members of your staff over this? There's a big firestorm over this. Why not come to this decision early on instead of letting it go on so long? And what finally prompted it?
I appreciate the question, Lisa. So I think any of you who have worked with me know that I listen to folks, I make adjustments. We didn't have this all worked out. And in the past month, remember, staff turnover happened about a month ago. There was a lot of interest. I've been listening, trying to respond, trying to figure out what concerns people have. We now have questions in front of the Ethics Commission. I've been very clear today what she will be doing until we have further guidance. Sometimes it just takes time to hear what people are saying and make decisions. But I want to be clear today. I've made a decision. I know what we're doing. I know what she is doing until we get more guidance from the Ethics Commission, and that is important to communicate to Oregonians today.
Here.
I know others will have questions on that topic, but I have a question on a different topic. The 90-day emergency on fentanyl is over. You had a press conference on that with government authorities in Portland. What are the next steps, realizing that it can't be either just a law enforcement response or addiction treatment response? And I ask that because I'm going to a lecture on fentanyl
Well, I appreciate the question, Peter. We are embargoed until Friday, where there will be an after-action report about the 90-day fentanyl emergency, and unfortunately, you're going to have to wait till Friday for that. So.
Christina. Yeah, Heather, what are you doing or what communication with the university's president, the Portland Public University, and what do you say to parents who are concerned about the safety of their kids that they send from out of state?
I have spoken directly with President Cudd at Portland State University to check in with her. I think that was yesterday. I think she's taking a very thoughtful, measured approach on how to handle the situation on her campus. Here's what I would say. I believe in the nonviolent expression of free speech. I do not support discriminatory harassment or violence or property damage. I think that needs to be dealt with. I do think universities are doing it in different ways. I do think we have seen some very peaceful expressions of free speech that are appropriate on our campuses here. So we'll continue to monitor that. What I want to say to families who have any concerns, we are watching it. We will make sure things don't get out of hand. And also, I think we want to make clear that Oregon is a place where we honor the exchange of ideas and free expression, but we do it in a way that people can feel safe and supported. So if there are any concerns, I certainly want to know in my office.
Some people think that this has already gotten out of hand. What do you say to that?
I think in other states, it has looked more dramatic and troubling. I think the campuses here are charting a very clear course to try to avoid that, but I think we'll just see how it goes.
Governor, I'm sorry, I'm confused as to how things will be substantively different with the First Lady from today forward, because you haven't said that she will not be having calls with staff, you haven't said that she will not be meeting with agency personnel, you haven't said that she won't be meeting with policymakers and decision makers. So can you be more clear about what she won't be doing, please?
I think it's important to say what she will be doing, and I think her calendar will be transparent. It's always available if people have questions going forward. But between now and we get more guidance from the Government Ethics Commission, I just want to be clear what she will be doing, because that's, I think, what Oregonians are asking. Is she going to go on tribe visits? Yes. Is she going to maybe do an occasional event for you? Yes. Is she going to listen if people, want to talk with her, particularly in a group setting? Line workers, people who are out there, people with lived experience. She's going to listen, because I think that's what you do in this role, is you listen to Oregonians. So I can't answer that question because we don't know until we get the Ethics Commission guidance.
Will she be involved in personnel decisions?
She is not involved in personnel decisions.
Well, she clearly interviewed Juliana Wallace before she decided whether we could qualify for the hospital. So is that different?
That is not a, I make all personnel decisions in my office.
Can you address the Cascadia call, please? Can you explain how it's appropriate for Juliana?
I would be happy to address that. So let me start off with this. When I am approached and when people express a concern about safety, particularly in this instance, workplace safety, I think it's my job to respond, but to respond accordingly and appropriately. So an individual reached out, said that there was potential workplace safety concern with Cascadia Health, and remember, there have been issues for mental health workers around the state in terms of safety. I did the appropriate thing, asked my Behavioral Health Initiative Director to follow up with this person, who then also said, hey, it might be better if you talk to my supervisor, which is what she did. And we gathered some information, and that was the end of the conversation. But let me give you an example. When I was speaker, I would get these questions all the time. What I don't do now is governors call people up, because I think that's probably a little challenging for folks. But I do take calls. Let me give you an example one. Last year, when there was a flood out in Eastern Oregon, in this really small town, I had someone reach out to me and it's like, do you know we have a flood in our town? And I said, no, I did not, because this person's brother owned a piece of property there. So I called our chief resilience officer and said, did you know there's a flood out here? And they went and dealt with it. I just want Oregonians to know that when it is appropriate in the safety of Oregonians, I'm going to pass that information along and follow up on it. And that's what I did in this case, and I think that's appropriate.
Julia.
The commitment to not having an office of the first spouse, is that a temporary decision until you get guidance from the Ethics Commission, or is that a commitment that for the next 2 or 6 years, there will not be an office of the first spouse?
As long as I'm governor, there will not be an office of the first spouse.
Remote question. I have a question from Isabella Warren with News Channel 21. Is your extension of the First Lady's role comparable to that of Governor Kitzhaber?
I can't speak to what the role, I think there are apples and oranges there. What I can say is, I've been very clear that the First Lady, as an unpaid volunteer with no financial interest in state government, is providing her expertise, both lived and professional, to provide information, and will continue to do so. So I don't think there's any parallel with the previous situation.
Governor, you're one of the most experienced politicians around. But this whole thing has been a mess. How did that happen?
That's a good question. So let's remember, I've gotten a lot done in my first year. My team has gotten a lot done in the first year. We've been super successful. And when this hasn't been smooth, I will admit that. I mean, we've hit some bumps. We haven't, I don't think, communicated well. And for those of you who know me, that's not particularly on brand. I tend to have everything all lined out. But we are learning from the concerns that people are raising. I think that's also on brand in the sense that I want to hear from people and make changes. And there's no roadmap for this. Let me go back to my statement. It's not like I walked into the office and said, here's what a first spouse can do. We don't have that. I have been trying to figure that out. That's why we're talking about a manual. That's why we've been consulting the National Governors Association. And I've taken input. And today is a marker where I say, here's what we're definitely not doing, and we're still trying to figure it out. And I will say, and I want to say to Oregonians, I regret that it's been messy, but just because something's not completely perfect doesn't mean we're not making progress to figure it out, and that's what this is about today.
Well, just on that point, we sat here on April 3rd and you said, we're just beginning to think of these questions that we're going to put before the Ethics Commission. When we read these emails, it becomes clear that for months, many of these questions have been raised by some of your most senior aides. You talked about Malia Vasiva being the advisor. When it becomes clear in these emails, she was brought in as the chief of staff. So it doesn't always feel like you have been the most transparent about how all this has transpired. And I wonder why the decision to air things in that way when now we look at these emails and it becomes clear that there was a lot going on that maybe wasn't represented.
Well, I appreciate the cynicism there a little bit. I do think I've been transparent. I do think we're trying to say, we don't know exactly, and we're trying to figure out and set guidelines. That's why today's really important. There's not going to be an Office of the First Spouse. And by the way, that's because other states have that, and we're like, well, is that what we should do? When we went to the February National Governors Association meeting, you see other first spouses with chiefs of staff. So that lingo could have arisen in conversations. But I want to be very clear. We're doing a manual so we can figure out the guardrails. We're seeking specific direction from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission on how to do this. I think what I've said the First Lady will be doing until we have that is very clear. And what I've heard from Oregonians is they want clarity. They're like, well, what is she doing? It's like, this is what she is going to do. We're going to see what the Government Ethics Commission says, and then go from there. But back to Julia's question, we're not going to have an Office of the First Spouse. We're not going to have a Chief of Staff for the First Spouse. Oregonians have been very clear. It's like, that's a little too much for us. So once we figure this out with more guidance, we will be back and say, okay, we've heard this. We can give you more answers.
Is she still the scheduler, though? That's not clear from the statement.
Right. So Malia is handling those kind of details and also helping with the manual. It is a temporary rotation, and she is an advisor in our office trying to help us work out these details, because I think we do need to work out the details.
So the other woman who was doing her schedule is doing something else, right?
She's still in the office. We have a lot of needs. She's shifted over to something else because she doesn't need two schedulers.
Lauren, could you elaborate on the way that you described that Cascadia call with, a workplace safety issue, and you asked your staff to intervene? That sounds pretty innocuous, and then you had one of your top aides who made it clear in an email that she found it to be highly inappropriate at best, for correct words. And so those just feel very, very different ways of casting that scenario, framing it.
I can only tell you what I know, because I was the one involved in the conversation. So.
The city of Grants Pass is obviously right now the poster child of homelessness in Oregon. It's also one of the only places that didn't get funding
so I don't like to contradict folks who ask questions. Josephine County was not included in the original emergency declaration, and we have reasons for that. They're in the full continuum of care. There are resources flowing there, and they've only just recently, probably in the last month or so, set up their first shelter. So they are making progress. You are right in your statement that they haven't been in the spot where other counties are, but they are trying to figure it out. And when we were down there, we heard for folks who were camping in the park, trying to find a different location so people didn't have to use the public park there, and they're working on it. But you're right, the Grants Pass case in front of the Supreme Court will definitely have implications depending on where that decision comes down, and that comes from Grants Pass. So.
The county got money, the city did not. So there is no shelter planned right now for Grants Pass.
Well, the way the money flows, it does flow to the counties. And honestly, I think there is some disagreement between the county and the city of Grants Pass, which I think is complicating things there, unfortunately.
Carlos?
Hi, Governor. In February, some of your top staffers asked you if you would hire a facilitator, an outside facilitator to help guide this process and quote unquote go through next steps, right? And I understand that you didn't. Why didn't you?
Like I said, I don't tend to comment and don't want to comment on personnel matters, so I'm just going to defer on that question.
Remote question. I have a question from Derek Strom with NBC5 in Medford. Governor, what do you think about the Grants Pass homeless case being heard by the Supreme Court? Grants Pass and Johnson.
I think the case on how folks who are unsheltered are treated is an important national debate. And I believe that local government can be predictable in helping individuals who are unsheltered, and that's why we have the Oregon law that we have today. I do think punishing people by finding them and throwing them in jail for being unsheltered goes too far. I will be interested to see what the Supreme Court says, because it will have implications across the country.
Governor, it's my understanding that your general counsel, Richard Lane, has prepared one or more memos on the subject of the First Lady's duties or how instruction might work. In the spirit of transparency that you talked about today, will you release Richard Lane's memo or writings on this topic?
I will not. The policy of my office is not to release legal opinions, no matter what they're about.
Governor, it's your privilege. You represent the people of Oregon. Why won't you waive it? If you're really going to be transparent about this issue, why not tell us what Richard thinks?
I appreciate the question. The policy of my office is not to release legal opinions, no matter what the topic is.
That would suggest that Richard's opinion is not the opinion you want to have. That somehow.
No, the answer is, no matter what the legal opinion is, on what matter, whatever it is in my office, I do not release those opinions. That is the answer.
You characterize that opinion without releasing. Would you say
Whatever legal opinions come to me do not get released to the public, no matter what they are. So,
I just want to give you a chance to respond to this notion in emergency emails from Ms. Tibbs that she has warned you or given guidance to you and your spouse about overstepping your authority. I'm sure you read that section, and I wanted your reaction. Are there instances that come to mind? How would you characterize her claim or statement there?
I am not going to comment on that email.
I just want to clarify too on what might change from some of these decisions that seem to maybe have received pushback. One of them also seems to be the standing rule, dignitary protective units for the First Lady, and then just clarifying that will remain the same with kind of taking it.
I appreciate that question. And I want to read something, because I know this has been an area of curiosity for individuals. So I asked the Oregon State Police, and we can release this in writing, but let me read it to you. This is a statement from the Oregon State Police. Oregon State Police provide dignitary protection services to Oregon's governor and the First Family. The Dignitary Protection Unit operates under the authority and direction of the superintendent. The Dignity Protection Unit's primary function is to protect the governor and the First Family when engaged in business in the governor's office. This has been the operating principle since the unit's creation, and these expectations have not changed. And we can share that with you directly.
I appreciate that, but it does seem that if maybe there was a kind of shift from your first order to
I wouldn't characterize it as a shift. I would say I do believe there was confusion and we needed clarification. The First Lady did attend and do events for me in the first year and did have protection. If anything, we were clarifying. Again, back to, we don't have a roadmap. We need to be clear so everybody understands. Under the policy of the Oregon State Police, that is their policy. On official duties, she has provided that service.
Governor, on the employment department, we get every day dozens of people calling us looking for help because of the situation there is so untenable. You can online, people are not getting claims paid, whether it be paid leave or unemployment benefits. What's your plan to fix this?
Yeah, I'm glad you're asking that because it is one of those things that I've been really not happy about. And we've had conversations directly with the department about this. I do think that the rollout of the new system, when everybody is on that system, and remember we have legacy people who were before the system and after the system is actually up and running and doing what it should be doing. It's still some kinks. That's a good thing. The bad thing is we have too many people who are stuck in limbo, whether for adjudication or other things, or they're getting held up for additional information and what I would call, trying to prevent fraud in the system. What I've said to the agency is we have to do better. I don't want to read any more stories about someone who can't pay the rent is going to lose their housing. That would be counterintuitive to what we're trying to achieve. The legislature did allow for more money at the employment department. They're up to hiring 70 new staff to help with the backlogs to get people through. The numbers are improving, but not up to my satisfaction, and we're continuing to work hard with the agency. We need to see some new ideas in addition to getting those staff on board. So I wish I had a better answer today. I want people to know I'm not happy. I don't want people left behind. I lived through the pandemic as the speaker when we had a lot of people who couldn't get help. I want to make sure people are getting the benefits they need, and we're still working on it.
Julia?
The Oregon Government Ethics Commission is about halfway through its 60-day preliminary review of this case, complaints filed against you. Have you been able to talk to or answer questions from the commission yet, and do you have any sense of how that investigation is going?
Just to clarify, they're not doing an investigation. So this is my understanding. So I think they meet in June. The staff and director of the commission will make a recommendation, and then the commission will consider. I think I am still responding to the complaints, and they will have that information. But that's all I can say at this point. That's up to their process.
Has the level of pushback in regards to the First Lady's involvement been a surprise to you and the First Lady? I would assume holding a press conference like this wasn't in the cards a couple of months ago, not something you thought you would be doing. Has this come as a surprise?
It has, but I've been surprised ever since I took this job. I mean, I've talked about it before. It's like, who knew that I would be having to deal with a high-end whiskey at OLCC or the resignation of a Secretary of State? So we've had some surprises in the first year. I think there are valid questions that people are asking. And we're trying to answer them as we figure this out. So again, that's why I think it's important for me to say to folks, I regret this hasn't been really clear and it's been a little messy. And it's my job to provide clarity. And today I'm like, here's what we're doing, here's what we're waiting for. And I apologize to Oregonians that I haven't been as good as I could possibly be in making this a smooth conversation.
Governor, the departure of 5 high-level staff people could give the impression that you have put the interests of the First Lady in front of the interests of your staff who represent the interests of the public. So have you put the First Lady's interests ahead of the interests of the Oregonians?
I have not.
How can you say that when 5 people have left your office, they haven't been replaced, they were loyalists, they were people who were working on the most important parts of your agenda, they're all gone?
So here's what I will say. We had staff turnover about a month ago. I had a good team before, I have a good team now. I have a new chief of staff. We had a good conversation with our staff about making any changes to our structure in the second year. I have new deputy chiefs of staff. We are hiring up. Transitions happen. I think, if I could be very honest, to equate all of those, people make choices to move on. We have a full team. We will continue to stay staffed up and do the work of Oregonians, and I'm laser focused on that.
So the emails make very clear that the reason those people left was because they
as your governor, when I say I have not put the interests of Oregonians or put the First Lady over the interests of Oregonians, all I can say is I have not. We have been laser focused on the work that is ahead of us, and we are doing the job. And I don't discuss individual personnel matters.
Christina, if Portland police need backup in the situation at PSU, will you send the state police? And what are you doing to make sure this doesn't turn into another 2020 protest situation?
I do think the situation, as we've talked about earlier on all our campuses, is fluid. We are monitoring that. I know the Portland Police Bureau has a good plan, and the Oregon State Police and we are monitoring, and we'll respond accordingly if additional resources are needed. At this point, I think they have a good plan, and we're just standing by.
Peter?
What happens to state policy under House Bill 3115 from 2021 regarding time, place, and manner for cities control public property and camping if the Supreme Court decides that cities can indeed?
Well, it'll be up to the legislature whether they want to take that up. It is the law that time, place, and manner should be followed to provide clarity for folks who are living unsheltered. And we have a lot of places around the state who are doing just fine under that law.
We have other communities, though, in a survey of some of them, that if they're not violating their law, they're certainly skirting it, much more restrictive CPMs. I know one city, basically, they let a lock in front of the police department, at least initially, due to camping ground, which I don't think is very productive.
So I won't say who I spoke to because I might not appreciate it, but I did speak with a city official for a city in Oregon who did something similar and that said, well, okay, we need to have a place where people can go. It's going to be here in front of our public building. That is meeting the law. It's like, if you're unsheltered, you need to be told where you can be. If you have a place to be, that's a place to be. We can debate whether we need people in the shelter, we need to get people housed, and it follows the law that was passed by the legislature. Hi. I really appreciate the question. Since we're having an event on Friday with the mayor and the county chair, I will have to defer on commenting until Friday, so thank you.
Governor, excuse me. What have you and the First Lady learned from the situation regarding her involvement in policy in your office? What are the lessons learned?
I think what we've learned is that people really are engaged and care about what we're doing. And I think that's understandable. And we also learned that I think this is a conversation that needs a lot more discussion over time, and so we're really looking forward to getting that guidance from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. There's no roadmap, and we need to figure it out.
Julia?
You've had staff with decades of experience leave your office. The remaining staff has been dealing with the fallout of this in the last month. How's that served as a distraction from the actual policy priorities of your office? And how are you going to maybe shift the focus back to governing the state of Oregon and not intrigue about your life in your office?
I haven't taken my eye off the ball at all. I have been completely focused on our priorities, and there has been staff turnover and transition. So I don't sleep a lot because I work hard, finding people who, and I want to say, we have hired some folks within our office who are doing a great job. So I don't want anyone to think that, yes, people have left, people have stepped up, we have good leadership, folks who have worked in other governor's offices, folks who have worked with me in the speaker's office. We have some very quality people in my office, and we're continuing to work hard. If you want to look at my calendar, I haven't missed a beat. We are working on housing and homelessness, behavioral health, and schools. That hasn't changed one bit.
You said a number of times, Governor, that you've heard from Oregonians in this process. What do you mean? Like, have you guys gotten a lot of feedback, calls, emails about the role of the First Lady? I'm just used to sort of what we've been reporting, but I don't know what has the reaction that you've heard in these specifics.
We've gotten a lot of emails when the stories broke, like, what's going on, right? Those are valid questions. In my constituent services, they read them, and I get summaries. I also read what you print. I also read some of the comments. So, all of that is information to understand where people are. I do read a lot, so,
You're still pursuing the creation of this manual, this first draft manual, and you're waiting for the ethics commission to weigh in, but you're not going to have an office of the first spouse. So I'm curious, like, what you're hoping those two things help you figure out. Like, what do you want the first spouse to be doing?
I think the role, the First Lady has, as I've mentioned, professional lived experience that is valuable. She's a volunteer, she's unpaid, and has something to bring to the work. We don't need an office of the first spouse. And I want to just clarify for folks, in other states, that is literally an office where there is multiple staff people and all kinds of things. That's not what we're envisioning. We're not doing that, don't plan to do that. The manual itself is, when you have someone like the First Lady, who is my wife, we need to have clarity about what happens. And so that manual cannot be completed until we get the final guidance from the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. But we need to understand, what does it mean? What kind of protocols do you need to be in place? I think I have an idea, but we won't know for sure until the commission gives us the final guidance. And I will say, under general staff advice and advice from people who've done this in other states, having clear guidelines is good for the staff. And that just seems like the realistic, sensible thing to do.
I sort of touched on what you said, we don't need an office of the first spouse, and that seems like a change to what was happening before, so I'm just kind of wanting to get a better picture, what has changed.
And I really appreciate that, because I do think early on when this conversation started almost a month ago, when you look at other states, I was using like, well, other states have an office. Do we need to have an office? And so I think that got ahead of the conversation. So I just want to be clear. We don't need an office of the first spouse. We need to have clear guidelines for the role of the First Lady in my office. And frankly, this is for first spouses, not just my office, but for administrations to come. Nothing is worse than walking into an office without anyone telling you how to do something. We want to create something that somebody can take, whoever has this job next.
Do you think there needed to be more transparency during your campaign? I don't know if it was in the plan at that time to have this level of involvement from the First Lady, but if you could go back and do it again, would you be more transparent at that time with the people of Oregon to say, hey, this is the level of involvement the First Lady is going to have if I'm elected?
It's not something we thought about or talked about. I was running to get elected, right? The First Lady was in one of my ads. It's not like she was hiding. And we didn't talk about what her role would be because we needed to get elected. I needed to win the campaign, right? So I had to get elected. That's what we were focused on.
Governor, Oregon does have a law that prohibits nepotism, hiring, or appointment of a family member. So obviously legislators are exempt from that, as we know we discussed today. But how would it ever be appropriate for your wife to have a policy or a role in your office under Oregon's nepotism?
My understanding is, and I'm not a lawyer, but the understanding of Oregon's nepotism law, where neither of us are lawyers, it has to do whether you have financial benefit from it. That is the exemption in the legislature.
You guys seem to be getting a little tired, so let's take two more. Okay, the two.
Governor, following up on John's question, when did you and the could you help us understand when you and the First Lady started talking about the role? Because given her calendar and the emails and stuff, it did seem like it expanded through time. So did you have a vision of what you wanted to accomplish in that way, or was it things just started happening?
I think we had no vision. She had talent to bring to the table. Remember in the very first year, we did a lot of traveling. And it was really important for me, for us to be there as a first family, meeting with the Oregonians around the state. So she was on those trips. And we were hearing conversations on the trips about what people wanted to talk about around behavioral health. And I think things just kind of moved ahead without a lot of clarification. And that's going back to the previous comment. That's why it's been a little uncertain and messy. We're bringing clarity to it. My office is saying, here's what the First Lady is doing now. Here's what we're not going to do. And we need more guidance. That's where we are.
What's the last word? Peter, one.
As long as you don't ask about fentanyl again. I can't answer the question.
No,